Alright, welcome back everybody to another series of tutorials. This time we're going to be covering dual wielding or double sabers. Again, I want to cover some important things in this introductory video. The first and foremost important thing is if you haven't seen my single saber series, I encourage you to go back and watch through that before trying to attempt two sabers, because if you haven't learned to use one saber in each hand effectively, then this is probably going to be a little bit too difficult for you. So that's the most important thing, is to be able to learn how to do each of the moves I showed in the single saber series, it's hard to say, before trying to do it with two sabers, because this, it's my view that dual wielding requires the greatest amount of coordination. So you will have needed to build the coordination with each move in each hand, if that makes sense, with a single saber. Because now, I mean, we're going to be covering essentially the same moves, it's just that we're going to be adding another saber to it. But pretty much they're all going to be roughly the same moves. There might be some variations here or there. But essentially it's going to be the same moves, just with another saber. The second thing is what you can actually use. Again, I'm using my two initiates. These originally came as a staff, which you may have seen in some of my other videos, but it comes apart, so I can use this as two sabers. You'll have to excuse this one. I had a little accident with the tip. The tip shattered and I had to do some surgery on it, so I don't even know if you can see that, but there's a lot of tape on there. So that's that one. I would encourage, if you're going to be using two sabers for this, to use something of equal weight and balance, especially if you're not using sabers for this. Like if you're using sticks or whatever. I would recommend using something of equal weight, preferably equal length. You pretty much want essentially the same thing in each hand to start with. I mean, eventually you can switch to something longer, shorter, heavier, lighter, you know, whatever. But when learning, it's usually best if you have something of equal weight and length in each hand, because that just helps build your coordination down. And finally, the other thing is, of course, the standard disclaimer of if you're going to practice these moves, to practice them very, very slowly. You know, build the coordination. Even if you are coordinated in each hand with a single saber, this still requires, you know, a good amount of coordination by doing it slowly. A lot of these moves, especially in some of the later moves when I get into like flowers, alternating figure eights or alternating flowers. Those require a good amount of coordination, and they require a good amount of time spent practicing them very slowly. Because if you don't, if you try to do any of these moves full speed at first, you may end up hurting yourself. Your sabers or whatever you're using are going to clack together. It's going to frustrate you. And I guess one more thing is to give yourself plenty of space for these moves. You know, don't try to practice in a room where you have a lot of things around you. Don't try to practice in a room with a low ceiling. You really want a good amount of room to be able to practice these moves. Because if you keep banging into stuff as you're trying to do these, again, you're going to get frustrated. It's going to cause you to tighten up really close. I mean, eventually you want to get to the point where you can do these moves in tight surroundings, but again, when learning, you want to be able to give yourself as plenty of room as possible. Now, I practice outside because of that, but you know, I have taken these moves inside to the garage, and I can do them in there. It just takes a good amount of coordination to be able to do that. So, I believe that's everything I wanted to cover in this video. Again, I'll be showing these lessons from the most basic to what I consider the most advanced. So again, I would encourage you to watch them in the order they appear. If you already know how to do a certain move, Like if you've already worked with dual wielding before, you can always skip ahead videos if you already know how to do a certain move, or you can still watch it. Maybe you might learn something you haven't considered before. That's always possible. So yeah, that's basically all that. Lesson 1, I'll be covering pretty much your basic flourishes, simultaneous and alternating. So I will see you in lesson 1 of dual sabers.